Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Annissa George. Thanks for tuning in. This discussion is part of my Community Impact Series, where I join Boston residents to bring awareness about their work and their advocacy. I believe the best way to find solutions to our most pressing issues is by making sure everyone has a seat at the table. Today's discussion will focus on special education services for students, and certainly today's discussion will be a conversation, but I don't doubt for a moment that through today's discussion with those that are with us today, we will certainly have some potential answers and action items to move to after the discussion. If you know me, I'm a fan certainly of having the talk and having the conversation, but we have to walk that talk afterwards. It's so important for our kids. It's so important for our families. And as a former teacher that included students that had IEPs and 504s, and as a parent of a child on a 504, this work is so, so important. Today, I'm glad to be joined by local parents who are also true advocates in this work for students who need special education services. They're here today to share their experiences, both personally and through the work they do with other families. Throughout this conversation today, we'll take questions in the comment section and do our very best to answer as many as possible. I'd like to welcome our guests, Fabian, Linda, and Charlie, have them introduce themselves and talk about how things are going today. I laugh because sometimes I just want to cry, and laughing's just, anyway, welcome everybody. I'm glad to have you here. Linda, we'll start with you if you would like to introduce yourself to the audience that's tuning in today. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Counselor George. I'm Linda Freeman. I'm a parent of a 12th grader plus who's transitioning from Boston Public Schools and out of Boston Green Academy. My years of experience with BPS, some of it's good and a few things are along the bumpy road. Vital things are transportation, understanding the IEP, how do you keep advocating for your kids, if not only not only for your own kid with special needs, is remember the others who may need your info, how to proceed, including as we go into inclusion, ethnic studies, and also to include partial inclusion as a way to intro into full inclusion. What else would you like to know?
No, that's great, Linda. Thanks for that introduction. I appreciate introducing the term, to me anyway, around partial inclusion. I think we can probably talk a little bit more about that, if not today, another time. So I think that's a fascinating topic. Fabienne, I'd love to go to you next if you'd introduce yourself. Maybe talk a little bit about your work, because you do exist in this space in a different way, not just as a parent, but as a true advocate.
Yes. Hi, my name is Fabian, and I have my only daughter who is in an IEP, and I'm also a board member of Boston Sped Pack and a dyslexia member with Decoding Dyslexia Massachusetts, and also sit on different board and advisor in sensitive youth programs. So I sit in different levels when it comes into education, and also advocate not only for my child, but also helping other parents, whether with the IEP or with the services that they might need on that. So that's the space that I am sitting on. But I'm also working with my daughter who's dyslexic, double deficit with ADHD and so many different barriers, anxiety, depression. So this has been like a complicated year, unprecedented year for so many. It's been a good and a rocky one, just like Linda mentioned, but I'm also being in a space where it takes a lot. And not only the kids is going through, but as a parent, you having some nights that you don't know how you're going to be able to do it. You don't know if your child's going to be okay, how the school's going to be okay. Sometimes I just I cannot sleep. I'm not only worried about my own child, but I also worried about so many others who may not have a parent like me or a grandmother or somebody who will be able to advocate for them. And those are the ones that I see like the voiceless. And how can I be shaking some tables or breaking some ceilings to just help those that's in need. I advocate for not just for one, but I advocate for the whole people, especially people black and brown, indigenous people in color, especially the homeless kids. Worried about them. It's not just so many different levels that we can work in on that. So those are the seats that I, encounter around, and I'm always willing to help because it kind of, trigger me and sad and very upsetting when I see a child is failing, because it's not just the child, it's the whole family, it's the whole community that is failing. And especially now, we need more support, more help than ever.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And Fabian, how old is your daughter?
She's 13.
13. Yeah. So Linda's son, a little bit older, your daughter, 13. And Charlie, if you could introduce yourself. And I know that through the work that we've been able to do together, your daughter is much younger. So we will have a conversation about sort of the full spectrum of care across all age groups.
Yes. So thank you again. I have two daughters. One of my daughters is on a full IEP. She is 8 years old, and she's at the Horseman School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And then my other daughter is 11, and she is at the Elliott School, not on an IEP. So both are very strong schools that have strong communities in different ways. But mainly the advocacy that brought me to serving on the SPEDPAC board with Fabian and Linda. And it was great actually to meet them at SPEDPAC meetings before joining the board. Was asking questions, understanding the IEPs, how it all works, how do we advocate was the big thing that I was learning from them. And then what I had found out was that, as a group of parents, we all have to advocate collectively also for the bigger picture. And so I came with a lot of questions and problems that we were trying to advocate for the Horseman School. And as they helped me, they also said, now it's your turn. Please help us. And please, especially during COVID, where we had my wife and I were able to balance a little bit more at home, so that I was able to then not only advocate for my daughter, then also advocate for the other families that were unable to advocate and stand up. So we were able to do that collectively as a SPEDPAC board, and I feel we did some great work during COVID and communicating with the Office of Special Education. But I'd learned very quickly the differences and disparities between schools, parents, quality of IEPs, those types of things where myopically I thought it was pretty universal and everybody had the same questions and problems, which it was not. And that goes to the key component of an IEP. It's an individualized education plan. And with that, individualized is the key word on how things actually happen in the service delivery. So thank you for having this meeting. I think there's a lot to go over, but hopefully I'll be able to answer some questions and learn also to take back to the SPEDPAC boards so we can continue to advocate for everyone.
I appreciate that. And I think that between the three of you, you certainly have demonstrated, I know that there are so many more parents that you work alongside that have, started probably initially, or certainly started initially advocating for your own child. And then very quickly, it became about all of the kids and how important that is, especially over this, complicated year, which I think is an accurate yet simple description of what this year has been. And, Charlie, just something you just said to me right now, it hits me a little bit because I don't know if it's something that I have ever spoken about very clearly and directly. And I think it's something that we do need to make sure that we're watching closely. And that's not, we talk a lot about the quality of any particular school. We talk about the desire to make sure that all of our schools are high quality and that the classroom experience is a high quality one. But we haven't really spent much time either, at the city level for sure. I imagine to some degree it's happening at the district level, but I wonder through the work of SPEDPAC, has there been a discussion around the variety of and quality of an IEP, how that IEP is written, and how dependent that the quality of that IEP is on both the providers and the educators, as well as the role of the parent, and eventually the child as the child ages in their participation. Charlie, do you mind just for a moment speaking a little bit more to that?
Sure. So there is really, that I know of, not a metric that is followed out of the Office of Special Education. However, the board is currently advocating, and thank you for asking this, because we've been working with the school committee. They're writing their final goals, and they're calling them guardrails, but I think they're transitioning to the word values, which sounds a lot more meaningful in this process. And we brought up specifically for special education, because on, I believe it's a superintendent's plan on page 48, she uses the term customer service, right? Customer satisfaction. And I think there's a big drive for that. But for special education, parents don't have the ability to give a quality feedback survey. How was your IEP meeting? How is the quality of that, the IEP, the annual review, all of those things, which we are advocating that there must be an accountability factor or a survey that gets sent out to every parent after every meeting. How was your coordinator of special education, or known as the COAS, how is she handling the meetings? That type of feedback, we know it in the business world, like a JD Edwards survey or the Net Promoter Score. Those types of things the Office of Special Education should be held accountable for, because by law, the IEP is an agreement between the district and the parent. But there isn't any feedback coming back from the parents. Are you satisfied with the year? Are you satisfied with the IEP? And so that is something that we believe is very important, and that we're advocating for, so that the district can start to measure quality, and measure success that way, rather than going back and saying, well, it seems like they achieved the goals, so that's successful, right?
But the one thing I'd add to that, and Fabienne or Linda, please chime in on this. You can survey a parent about their experience, but how are we comparing the quality? And it's hard because it is an individualized plan. So we're talking about a particular student and his or her particular needs. But we know that there are some challenges across our education system, especially in accessing high quality care, especially when we think about the implications it has for Black and brown children, and in particular boys. And that's sort of a separate or a sub-separate classroom about, or a sub-separate issue often related to the classroom, a sub-separate classroom. But we know that there is a different quality of, I want to believe, and I do believe, that the quality and the delivery, when the services are identified, that they are delivered in a high quality manner. I believe in our educators and the work that they do, but identifying what that prescription is, designing what that plan is. Are there ways to ensure that child A and child B, who are presenting with the same challenges, who are maybe dealing with similar disabilities and dealing with similar circumstances, similar age groups, similar gender perhaps, same gender perhaps, that they are also receiving the same level of same quality of an IEP, never mind the delivery of services? Is there a way, or has there ever been a way to analyze the writing of an IEP and looking to see that we are providing high quality IEPs for all of our kids across the board?
One thing. Go ahead, Peter.
Hi, this is Linda. It's a struggle. It's been a struggle for years. You have to fight for every little bit, or if we have a high majority of single parents. If you're a single parent without extended family nearby, or this has never occurred in the family, so nobody can give you a clue as to what to do, you kind of struggle and bump along the way and hope for the best. There are advocates out there who can help you to write a better IEP and what to look for. It hasn't always been easy, and I hear it constantly. And the biggest struggle is for our parents where English is not the primary language. It's sad to say, just from listening to parents whose language is not English as a primary language, is understanding that with the services and how the IEP is written, they can get bowled over and the services are not rendered, or the services not being rendered impacts the way their child will learn. So if they say they don't want to sign it because they don't they don't understand anything, well, you need somebody to help you interpret it, or before the IEP, what's going on in it, and at the time of the team meeting. Um, if we didn't have the fight for bilingual, all our kids would be in deep hot water without the proper services. And I'm going to pass this off to Fabian.
Yes, what I will add into that is there's not a formula for IEP when it comes to a child, because it depends of the what the child needs. And what I encounter is my daughter is my only child, and when the whole process of doing testing, of doing, the whole IEP, I didn't know what was the bind. There was never an education to parents to say, this is what your child needs, this is how to compare with the other child. I had to learn the hard way. And I think that's why I kind of dedicate my time and so much energy to help those that's coming my way, coming this way. They don't go through the same struggle that I went through. Some night I cried. I was helpless because I didn't know. I don't have money to hire a lawyer. I don't have money to hire an advocate. And what we're doing at SpedPAC on the board is trying to educate those parents and to understand what the IEP, the 504, what's your rights, what the questions to ask on the IEP, those things that it doesn't, you don't understand the testing that they are doing, how often you have to do a reevaluation. Because if you have a parent coming from whether you were born and raised here or just coming from another island, from another country, because it's a different school system, you don't know those things. And it's until you get to those, on that poll, you'll be able to know, oh, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do that. Personally, I never knew that my IEP they gave me, they said, oh, this is what the services is. Or if you agree with it, just sign. I will sign it right away. I didn't know that I had to wait 45 days. Those was like before. So like Tori mentioned, there's no survey, there is no information to say like some of the coordinators doing better job than the others, where they'll be able to just say, okay, this is the IEP. You'll be able to get all your testing 2 days prior, even though you ask for a week, they don't send that to you. So some of them is like a day before. You don't have that much time to look at it, to review it, to ask somebody else to look at it for you. Because every school, the format is different, the language is different. Some IEP they put in the things, whether you speak English, you do not understand the terminology that they are using. Because if you didn't go to school for education, certain terminology, you're not going to be able to understand that. I didn't know what dyslexia is. There's different partial of dyslexia. I didn't know there's like different strains of autism. So you go to the doctor, they're gonna tell you your child is autistic, but you have to dissect to see what exactly what the needs are. Because also certain school has certain services. Not all school has this, the services that will be able to cater to help your child. But if the school doesn't have that, they're going to tell you we have A and B, and your child need A, B, C, D. But how do you continue to advocate for them to say you want all this? Because there's going to be the way I see it. There's so many pushback. Not every parent is sitting on the table, and sometimes they see the parent you coming as a fighter. You're fighting with the district. You're not fighting with the district. I always said we come to the table as a partner. Remember, we here to support John. Little John needs everything that he needs, everything you can provide. If you don't have it, let's not waste time. Let me know you cannot do it. We'll look for somewhere else. Actually, they should be able to want to guide you and said, okay, we're going to do the evaluation. Your child needs certain things. If you do not ask on those meetings to say, my child needs services 4 times a day or 3 times a day, even though they know that's what it needs to be done, they're not going to offer that to you. They're not going to give it to you. If you don't know, you in blind spot, you don't know. I'm not saying it's all of them, but it's a handful of the ones. And in her community, her kids are suffering. When you see, like, a child is reading in fifth, sixth grade is reading at the second grade level, the school could help since day one, but they choose not to help, not to give the services, or they're giving you something is not adequate to help that child. And you as a parent, you think you trust the school. You're giving them, you said that's the school, you trust them, you trust the system, you trust the teachers, but at the same time, they are the one who's failing your kids. So how can you be out of way to make sure that you're gonna be able to understand the IEP? Some IEPs I've seen has like 10 pages. Some IEP I've seen has 30 pages. And some kids they'll be like, what's happening? Are they giving you the right services? Are they giving you the right things? But it's really hard. It's not easy at all.
And I think that it's really important in that piece there to make sure that parents are prepared going in, so that there is a format and a set expectations in how you will engage with the COS, how you are engaging with the educators in a particular building around your child. But there should be the expectation I have is that is consistent across all schools, consistent for all students, and consistent in sort of the way that we engage with families and parents through the IEP process and through those team meetings, to make sure there is consistency in delivering services across the district. And I think that survey opportunity is something that could be applied to all sorts. Every time that you engage with the district, there should be some sort of follow-up. There should be some sort of data collection, data point that we're looking at. Obviously, when we decide to collect data, it's going to be something that we agree it's important to look at. So maybe not at every touch point, but at some of these more significant touch points, we've got to manage that. We've got to manage that information. So, let's talk about today and about what's happening in schools right now. And what are and when we think about in this answer or this question, you can answer thinking about your own child or all of our children. But, what are we most concerned about this school year? And what are some of the common themes that are coming up from parents regarding the reopening process and sort of the coming months? What are we most worried about?
If you don't mind, I'll start. I understand that the Asian communities are having reluctance about sending their kids back because of all the rhetoric and all the anti-Asian attacks. The strategy is of how do we bring those kids back and their families to be more comfortable to bring them back to school. I don't care if the kids live like next door to the school, half a block from the school, 5 blocks within the mile, a tad over the mile. How do you make these families and the children feel safe coming back to school when you're reopening? I made a suggestion of having additional crossing guards at strategic points as a pathway to the school. Whether that can happen or not is another thing. The other item is transportation. Someone raised this issue with me when it came to transportation, and that involves our SPED kids. And the question is, why are the drivers going up for bid, having to bid, and why are the bus monitors having to bid over again? Here we are coming up on May when you only have like a month and a half of school left. Because what is occurring is you will disjoint the kids from that transition of having a connectivity with the bus monitor and the bus driver. And then you're only like, barely like 6 to 8 weeks away from school like ending. The question is why? Why don't you just, when we get into ESY, I can understand changing it then.
Right. I am taking some notes just so you know. And if I could just respond quickly, just from my recollection and some of the conversations we've had with the change in going to school full time in a couple of weeks, or having the option to be in school 5 days a week, is a change in working conditions. So that is a negotiated element of the police, not the police, that's another part of my life these days, and the bus driver's contract. So it's really important that we're following our obligations to that contract in particular. I imagine that most of those drivers will be consistent, but I do appreciate that the idea and that concept and how important it is around consistency. We know how important consistency is for children from K to 12 throughout all grade levels. So that's important. But I've made a particular note of that because I think that's something important to remember and remind the school district about as we get to that. Fabian or Charlie, tell us a little bit about some of the concerns that you have from this school year and sort of the opportunity moving forward.
I have few concerns. Learning loss, definitely. Trust of the school, of the whole, not just the school but the district itself, because we see so many changes, like opening, closing, hybrid, opening. Like now they said okay, and I totally understand and believe that yes, the kids needs to go back to school for so many reasons, social, emotional, which we know that the kids are having real a lot of these issues and lack of them because it's been a year.
Right.
But at the same time, we also still the numbers are going up. And yes, restaurants open, so many different things are open, but we also having losing grandma, mother, people are still being sick. And I think, communication wise, it's very important on that. Um, at the model of going back, you have spring break and then everybody back. You don't know where they have been, who's been there. If they're gonna be a testing. Even though some kids are testing, but not every single kids are testing. So I wish that they said keeping the hybrid, and then they can be able to just work on that in safety. And then that's me personally, or trying to just work on that. Let's finish it, and then planning to just testing in the summer, the 5 days. How's that? More people, more teachers, more administration people will be able to take the vaccine, and then we have the numbers growing, and then we can be able to say, okay, how's the summers going? How things, and having a strong coming back in September.
Yes.
So that's me personally, but also the safety issue, the transportation, again, the numbers of the variants is different. Social emotional, that's another big piece as well. Yes, we have more social workers coming in, but I don't want it to think about it's just kids who has an IEP who needs support. The
Right.
same way that we had part-time nurses that was in school, now we have full-time. But some school, it needs more than one full-time nurse because it's so much, especially now with the COVID we have. So
Right.
they need more than just one nurse. Charlie and I were lucky. Our kids at the Elliott, the principal and the staff are doing amazing. They had two teachers, two nurses, and so on, with to support on that. But not every school is like the Elliott.
Right.
So and even the high school, like they have a big fear that kids in high school, they're not ready to go to college, or even the kids graduating. So what are we doing to support them? So those are my kids who has learning loss, like they didn't need the IEP, they didn't get the compensatory numbers and hours to just get in there. How are we gonna be able to get to close that gap, especially kids who's already struggling prior, and now it's the number is bigger. We know, like a couple of months ago, there was an article come out about 40% of some kids hasn't logged in at all.
Right.
How are we reaching to those kids? How are we getting back to them?
Right.
So it's really there's a lot of layers, a lot of issues. Of course, the anti-racism thing is another one. The DEI is another issue, but there's different layers under that umbrella. But my main
What was that last thing, Fabian?
diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh, yeah.
I have to just bring that up and then talking about it, just like Linda, the anti-racism of the Asian, like and having those kind of conversation with the kids. And I think it's and the other worry I have, like the teachers union, up to negotiation of their contract. We don't know what's gonna happen on doing that negotiation. Are we looking forward to just open September? Is there going to be some pullback? Is there going to be some strength? We want our kids back to school. We want our teachers back to school, but let's make sure that we can do that collectively safe,
Yes.
so we don't repeat what we just encountered, like closing, open, closing, opening.
Right. No, for sure. The uncertainty is really challenging. And, we talk a little bit about that consistency and how important that is both for child and adult alike. And I do want to respond just, Fabian, because I know the information from a hearing we had a few weeks ago around the vaccination rate for our educators. So Boston Public Schools employees, so that includes everybody, we're at, this number is probably from about 10 days ago at 80%. Have initiated the vaccination process. So if they were doing a two-part, they at least had the first shot in, if not also the second. Then obviously if they had the J&J one, that's a different, that is part of that number though. So 80% to me is a significant number and a good number. And I'm hopeful over the last 10 years, we've had an increase in that. But then that consistency, and we've heard quite a bit about that, this opening and then closing and then a little bit of opening and these, few steps forward and few steps back is really unsettling for kids, for families, for the dynamic of a school, and for the community as it extends. I also want to note that we are at our time to wrap up. We wanted to make this sort of a quick conversation to identify some of the challenges that families are facing. So Charlie, I'd love to give you the last word. If you'd like to share anything, and whether it's about this last year and what we're hopeful for in the months in the school year to come, or just sort of a general comment about, and hopefully on a positive note, because I'm certainly hopeful about what's upcoming for us.
Yeah. So, well, two things. One, on the SPEDPEC board level, at the executive level, we're actually looking forward to, I know the Office of Special Education, the director, Ethan D'Alwyn Burns, is supposed to present the strategic plan for the Office of Special Education in May. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we are looking at is what did they achieve in the past year with prior to COVID and during COVID? And then what is the plan for our students going forward, right? Because we're talking big words that people are talking about, transformational, big change. And we're looking forward to seeing that. And we really want to see that because we talk about schools that need focus, the McKinley School, other schools that have not been focused on by the Office of Special Education. So we're looking forward to that. And then I think on a positive note for me personally, in the IEP meeting and all that, everybody boiled it down to what actually, we were looking at the positives and trying to break apart all the things. And our daughter, in the consistent comments, was that she is so happy to be back at school, right? And that joy and the joy that the other kids being in school it's infectious, right? It just goes to everybody. Everyone's happy, the teachers, so then they feel safe. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we're seeing now is that, and I'm speaking this as a parent through the lens of a child through special education, they don't understand all the things that are going on, but they're so happy, right? They're so happy to be around their peers and their teachers. And that's what drives me to continue this, is that if that brings happiness and joy to my daughter and to the people around her, then that's something that I would absolutely advocate, fight, and continue to fight for parents, because fighting is not, and joy usually are not congruent. But if that's what we have to do, and I would do that always, so that people can actually see some happiness in some of the craziness that we're going through. But school has definitely been a positive thing for her that she's been back.
Well, I love that. And I think joy, especially when talking about our schools, is the most perfect place to end today's quick conversation with all of you. I am so grateful for the work that you all continue to do not just for your own children, but for all of our kids across the district. Conversations like this inform my work and are critical to keep us moving forward and making progress. If you have organizations, guests, or topics that you recommend for future discussions, please submit them to us and we will get to it. Charlie, Fabian, Linda, thank you so much for this afternoon. And the sun is shining today, so happy spring. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Have a good one.